I'm VJ Hamilton and welcome to the Autoimmune RESET, the place for you to learn how to thrive with autoimmune disease and feel empowered to take steps to transform your health to feel better than ever. You can start making changes today to improve your health. So with every episode, my mission is to share with you simple ways to up-level your diet and lifestyle with key learnings from my own journey reversing autoimmune disease and inspirational stories from those who have reset their autoimmune symptoms and are now thriving in life. I suffered from autoimmune disease for over 25 years and now I live symptom-free, and I wish the same for you as well. So thank you for being here and sharing this time with me. Now let's get started. Hello and welcome back to the Autoimmune RESET Podcast. I'm your host, VJ Hamilton. I'm a nutritionist, scientist, and expert in autoimmune disease. And today's episode feels quite special for me, really, because last week I presented a full day's CPD session at the college that I originally trained at when I became a nutritionist. And it was all about arthritis. And I remember when I was just starting out that I would attend lots of these CPD courses, which I still do now. There are different ones that I probably go to, but I still really love the ones at the college that I trained at, which is the Institute for Optimum Nutrition. It was just lovely to be hosting a session with people who are so well informed, so enthusiastic about health, and speaking to fellow practitioners as well. And as I was preparing the lecture, I kept thinking that actually this information is relevant for practitioners, but it is relevant for anybody who is living with inflammatory joint issues, whether that be osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis. If you have joint pain, then you need to know about this. And that's why today I really want to talk to you about what I shared as part of this training, because joint health is not just about cartilage. It's about our whole body. It's not just about aging. It's about inflammation. And it's not just about wear and tear. And so many people will just say, yeah, I've got arthritis, but I'm getting older. And I know somebody quite close to me, I didn't even realize they had arthritis. And then I started talking about what I was doing and they said, oh yeah, I've got arthritis. And I asked, well, what have you been doing about it? And they haven't been doing anything because they just think that it's normal. And that's what I'd like to explain to you today. If you are living with joint problems, then you can do something about it. It's not just part of aging. I lived with joint issues for 15 years. It was one of my worst symptoms, to be honest, because it affected my daily life. It affected exercise. It affected how I worked. I would be in pain and it affected how I would be thinking. And I never got formally diagnosed with arthritis. And that's why it doesn't feel as relevant for me. But when I think about it, it was hugely relevant for me. And as I said, it was probably one of my worst symptoms in terms of how it was affecting my life. So let's talk about how we can rethink arthritis, because when most people think about arthritis, especially osteoarthritis, which is often called the wear and tear arthritis, they're told a fairly simple story, like it's mechanical and it's degeneration, it's all to do with age, it's completely inevitable. And yes, there is an aspect of it which is mechanical. Of course it is. But that explanation is incomplete. And even in osteoarthritis, we know that there is measurable inflammatory signaling, and a lot of studies are now coming out showing that there is this inflammatory response happening in osteoarthritis as well as the autoimmune type arthritis. And we see elevated cytokines, which are the immune messengers that create inflammation in the body. We can see immune cell activation within the joint and the cartilage breakdown. And we can also see metabolic dysfunction, which influences cartilage breakdown as well. And when we move into inflammatory arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis, we know the immune system is clearly central here. But here's the most interesting question. Why is the immune system reacting to the joints in the first place? Why are they attacking cartilage? Why is the synovial tissue becoming inflamed? And that's where we need to talk about the gut immune connection, because we can't ignore this. When I'm working with arthritis, the gut is playing a central role. And there is something called the gut joint axis. And this isn't just an alternative theory, it's based on immunology. So let's walk through the mechanism. So first we have intestinal permeability. The gut lining is only 1 cell layer thick, and it's exquisitely designed to allow nutrients through and to keep larger antigens, those things that stimulate the inflammatory response, out. But stress, infections, dysbiosis, using medications and ultra-processed diets, these can all increase permeability. And when that happens, bacterial fragments like lipopolysaccharide, which is a toxin to the body, can cross into circulation. Undigested food proteins can cross as well, especially if you're not digesting your food well. And microbial metabolites can cross over the gut barrier too. And the immune system sees all of these things as a threat. And when your immune vigilance increases systemically, or if you're more prone to immune vigilance genetically, then it doesn't just stay in the gut, and it can express in the joints as well. And the synovial lining of the joint becomes inflamed, cytokine production increases, and that's when that pain sensation rises, and the joint becomes the visible site of systemic immune imbalance. And that was certainly the case for me. Whenever I was run down, whenever I was inflamed, I felt it in my joints. It was one of the first places that I felt it. The second mechanism is microbial triggers, and certain microbes have been repeatedly associated with certain forms of arthritis. We have Prevotella, which is a bacteria that can be found in the gut, and that is linked to early rheumatoid arthritis. There's Klebsiella, which has been associated with ankylosing spondylitis. And then you have Porphyromonas gingivalis, which is an oral bacterium, and that has been linked to rheumatoid arthritis as well, through the citrination pathway. So again, we are talking more about gut health here, but you can have leaky gums and it can be a similar mechanism. And these organisms may shift the immune balance towards what we call this Th17 response, which is when your immune systems become more inflamed. It increases interleukin 17 and TNF alpha, which is an important cytokine when it comes to these types of conditions. There is a range of medications that are there to inhibit that TNF alpha signaling. And there can also be this potential trigger through molecular mimicry, which is where the immune system will be firing up against a bacteria and at the same time fire up against the joint because it becomes confused between the two. And this means the immune system begins to react not just to the microbes, but to self-tissue. And that is not wear and tear, that is immune misdirection. And the third mechanism is all to do with these things called short-chain fatty acids. And healthy gut bacteria produce compounds like butyrate, and butyrate strengthens the gut lining and is a short-chain fatty acid. It increases regulatory T cells, which are important for keeping the immune system in check. It reduces inflammatory signaling, and it supports immune tolerance as well. And when microbial diversity drops, that butyrate production drops as well. And when I'm working with clients, I often see clients that don't have certain bacterial strains that help with butyrate production. And that is certainly a factor when it comes to the inflammatory response in their body, because immune tolerance has dropped at that point. And that, again, is happening to the joint downstream. Another key piece of the puzzle is essential fatty acids, and we often oversimplify this into omega-6 equates to bad and omega-3 equates to good, but biology is rarely binary, and that can be unfortunate at times. But omega-6 fatty acids, particularly something called arachidonic acids, feeds this inflammatory COX-2 pathway, and it produces prostaglandins like PGE2 and leukotrienes, and these are really pro-inflammatory. And on the flip side, omega-3 fatty acids produce DHA and EPA, and they compete with that same pathway, and they produce a different prostaglandin, which is PGE3. And these are less inflammatory compounds. And even more importantly, EPA and DHA produce these things called resolvins. And resolvins are definitely a focus at the moment when it comes to research, because we don't want to suppress inflammation. It's there to protect us against microbes and pathogens. What we want to do is, once that inflammatory response has done its job, we want to resolve it. And that's where resolvins that are produced from EPA and DHA can really help to suppress inflammation when it's not needed anymore. And that distinction is crucial because chronic arthritis is often not about excessive inflammation alone. It's about the failure to resolve that inflammation, which means supporting EPA intake, improving omega balance, and ensuring fat absorption from the gut are all foundational steps when it comes to managing arthritis symptoms. And digestion is one of the most underrated steps. And this is something I emphasize strongly when I'm working with clients and also when I was doing the training, because before collagen, before antimicrobials, before detox protocols, you need to understand if you are actually absorbing the nutrients that you're taking. And that's what I'm looking at with my client. Can this person digest and absorb properly? Because low stomach acid is incredibly common in chronically stressed clients. Poor bile flow reduces fat absorption, and if you have slow transit time, it can increase toxin recirculation because it's not being drawn and pulled out of the body quickly enough. And if iron is low, B12 is low, protein intake seems adequate, but muscle mass is dropping, I think digestion first, because if they can't digest, then they can't rebuild. And poor digestion means poor protein absorption, poor collagen synthesis, poor omega-3 delivery, poor mineral uptake. These are all factors when it comes to your joints. And sometimes fatigue improves more from supporting stomach acid and bile flow than any antimicrobial protocol ever will. So remember, replace is often the most underestimated step in digestive work because we use a framework and replace is one of those. And we need to remember that there is a lot of complexity here, but actually what it comes down to is, are you digesting your food? Are you absorbing your food? And if that isn't happening, then that's something that needs to be addressed first. And then we have the nervous system and how that affects the joints. And this piece often surprises people because inflammation is not just immune driven. It's also nervous system mediated, and sympathetic dominance, when we're in that more fight or flight response, increases inflammatory cytokines and it reduces vagal anti-inflammatory signaling, it impairs gut barrier, it heightens your pain sensitivity. And the vagus nerve in the body directly influences that TNF-alpha production, which we know is at the heart of arthritis, especially the more inflammatory type arthritis like rheumatoid arthritis. And that's where simple practices like breath work or humming, you can use cold exposure if that's going to be right for you, but even just putting some cold water on your face can help to tone that muscle, having morning light. These are all things that we can start including on a daily basis to help with our vagal tone, and they will modulate that immune system at the same time. And in complex clients, especially those who have hypermobility like Ehlers-Danlos syndrome or mast cell activation, or in a state of chronic stress, then nervous system regulation is foundational. And without it, it's going to be very hard to move forward when it comes to your health. And you can't out-supplement this. I wish you could. I used to love biohacking and all the things that you could do to optimize your health and take shortcuts. For years, I looked for shortcuts in the way I moved and the way I did things. And now I've realized that actually doing things properly and doing things right and giving your body what it needs rather than just trying to hack your way out of things can make the most meaningful difference in the long run. And you're just going to feel so much calmer and more focused and have more clarity. And lastly, one of the final slides in my lecture was about sequencing, because order really does matter. And if you open every detox pathway aggressively, but say bile flow is impaired or your liver isn't working as effectively as it should be, or for whatever reason you have high toxicity, then it means that your system is going to overflow, and we don't want that. We need to make sure that we are doing things in the right order. If you kill microbes without stabilizing the gut lining first, then you're more likely to flare. And if you push collagen in without ensuring that you are actually digesting it and that you have sufficient amounts of vitamin C, then it's just wasted effort, and collagen can be quite expensive. So for me, the layered approach looks like stabilizing the gut lining, then thinking about the key nutrients we can start including, supporting gentle clearance and detox, balancing the autonomic nervous system, strengthening connective tissue, and then bringing in some movement. I mean, you can start with bringing in some movement. You need to do it gently at first. Fluidity and movement is important, but you don't want to overdo it and cause yourself more harm. So this is the approach that I often take. It is a bit more slower, but in the long run, it really does pay off. And when I was delivering this presentation, it really did remind me how much has changed since I started studying. And when I first trained, arthritis was primarily seen as a joint condition. And now, years later, I see it as a systemic condition. And I think the world is seeing it as a systemic condition now. And it's just expressed through the joints. It's related to the gut. It's related to the immune system. It's related to our liver, our mitochondria, our nervous system. These are all drivers. And yeah, it might not be everything for you, but which one of those is most relevant for you? And once you start working on the root cause, on the underlying imbalances, and not focusing too much on your joints, it changes everything. It's the same with alopecia. It's the same with skin conditions. We see so much on social media and in the media and in the news about these topical treatments we can use and these quick fixes. Yes, they can be helpful in the short term, but if you are really looking for long-lasting change, then the way to do it is really to think about your body as interconnected and how the systems all come together, and realizing that your gut is a central part to that. It's not always about the gut, but a lot of the time when I'm working with clients, it is. And I've worked with a lot of clients now. And to be honest, it's when we work on the gut and their symptoms don't improve that I'm most concerned, because I then know there is more going on here. There's more complexity. Is there something in the environment? Is there toxicity? Is there something genetic that we're missing? And then we can dig a bit more and understand that better. But once you understand this a little bit more about your condition, it really does change everything. Because if you're struggling with joint pain, with stiffness, with flares, or having those inflammatory cycles, then I would gently encourage you to ask, how is your gut? How is your digestion? Are you eating enough omega-3 rich foods? Is your nervous system in that wired and heightened state? Because joint health is far more about your internal ecosystem than we were ever told. And sometimes the most powerful work is about doing it slowly, but doing it in a layered way, in a strategic way, in a calm way. And that is the work that I do with my clients. I would love for somebody to come and see me and find something to fix them very quickly. But the truth is, you go through a process when you are recovering. You need to learn about yourself, your timeline, your story, what triggered it for you, what you like, what your body likes, what these signs are telling you. And over time, as you learn a little bit more each day about those signals and about yourself and about what's working for you, you will start getting better, but you just have to do it a step at a time and stop focusing so much on the symptom and think about what else could be going on that could be causing this. That is why when I'm working with clients, we work together over a 3 or 4 month period, and sometimes longer than that, dependent on the complexity of the condition. And that's where they see these meaningful results. And as they continue to see results, we tweak things, we update things. And sometimes clients come to me because they have swollen eyes, or they're unable to live their normal life. They might be an artist, or they like going to the gym, or part of their work is using their hands, and they come to me and they're completely distraught when we first start working together. And by the end of working together, we're talking about something completely different. And it's almost like they forgot about this symptom that they'd been living with and had been upsetting them for so long. And as much as it's brilliant to acknowledge that, I actually quite like it when we get to that point, because for me, I can see how far they've come and they've almost forgotten about the symptoms that they used to be living with on a daily basis. And I know I was the same, especially when I'm creating a course or creating a presentation or working with a client. Sometimes the memories come back to me and I remember how I used to live and how I used to feel. And it's so easy to forget that. So wherever you are today, if you've started making changes to your health, then good for you. Think about the effort that you're putting in and the results that you're seeing, and be proud of yourself for that, because it's not easy. It really isn't easy, especially if you're living with fatigue and pain and gut issues and you're trying to do your best and you're reacting to everything. Honestly, little things will be making a big difference for you. You just might not be seeing them yet, but think about where you were a couple of years ago. If you're newly diagnosed, it might be a little bit different, but even if you're newly diagnosed and you've made some key changes for your health, then good for you. You know, you're doing something already, and That's why I just like to take a structured approach, a step-by-step approach, nothing too overwhelming. So that's it for today. If you have any questions about anything that I've discussed on this episode, if you're living with arthritis or you have a family member with arthritis, you would like to know more about it, then you can also pop over to the Autoimmune Forum and ask questions over there. You'll also find the link to my services and the testing that I offer if you would like to look into any imbalances or any reactivity that you have when it comes to your gut. If not, have a fantastic week and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Thank you very much for joining me today on the Autoimmune Reset. I really hope you enjoyed the discussion, and be sure to subscribe to the podcast so that you never miss an episode. And if you liked it, I would hugely appreciate a review on iTunes, as it helps me understand what you like about the podcast and to help share the information with more people. I'm excited to speak to you next time, and remember, you have the power to take the reins on your health. So keep the faith and celebrate the small wins. Until next time.